When I first opened my eyes, everything around me felt blurry, like I was swimming underwater. The ceiling above me was white, too white, almost glowing. There was a soft beeping sound near my ear, rhythmic and constant, like a quiet heartbeat that wasn't mine. My throat burned when I tried to swallow. My lips were dry, and something heavy sat on my chest. Fear, maybe? Or exhaustion. I turned my head slightly and saw him, my husband, Daniel, sitting beside me in a stiff plastic chair. His elbows rested on his knees, his head buried in his hands. When he noticed I was awake, he looked up instantly, and his face changed, so fast it almost startled me. "Thank God," he said, standing and leaning closer. "You're awake. I thought I lost you." His voice trembled, but his eyes didn't. They looked tired, maybe, but not sad. Not the kind of sad you expect from someone who almost lost his wife. I wanted to say something, but my mouth felt like sandpaper. I could only whisper, "Where, where am I?" He brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You're in the hospital. You fainted, sweetheart. They said your body just shut down for a while. You've been under a lot of stress." He said the word stress like it explained everything. But the moment he said it, flashes came to me, small, sharp, like broken glass. The argument that morning. The sound of his voice, louder than usual. My hand on the table trembling. Then nothing. Just darkness. I closed my eyes again, pretending to drift off, even though my heart was racing. When I woke again later, the sun had changed direction. The room was brighter, warmer. A nurse came in, checked the IV bag, smiled kindly, and asked how I was feeling. "Tired," I whispered. "What happened?" She hesitated for a second, a kind of careful pause that nurses make when they're not sure how much to say. "You fainted at home," she said finally. "Your husband brought you in. He was very worried." Very worried? The word stung, because I remembered something else now. A voice, his voice, just before I blacked out. "You make everything harder. Do you know that?" Then the sound of something falling. Then silence. I wanted to ask her more, but Daniel walked back in the room just then, carrying a cup of coffee. His timing was always perfect, too perfect. The nurse gave me a quick smile and slipped out. He sat down beside me again. "You scared me, Laura," he said, shaking his head. "I don't know what I'd do if something happened to you." There it was again, that softness, that concern that felt too smooth to be real. I'd seen it before. The same voice he used when people were around, when he wanted to look like the caring husband. He was good at it. Too good. I stayed in that hospital bed for 3 days. The doctor said I was exhausted, mentally, physically. They used words like dehydration and stress reaction, but none of it really explained why my whole body felt like it had been emptied out. Daniel stayed with me most of the time. He brought flowers, called the nurses sweetheart, smiled at everyone. Everyone loved him. They told me how lucky I was to have such a devoted man. But when they left the room, when the door clicked shut behind them, his smile faded. He'd stand by the window, scrolling through his phone, sighing, whispering under his breath, "You really scared me this time, Laura. You've got to stop making scenes." Making scenes? I wanted to tell him I didn't faint on purpose, that my body gave up because my heart couldn't handle one more day of pretending things were okay. But instead, I just nodded, like I always did. The night before I was discharged, I woke up to the sound of voices outside my room. One of them was Daniel's. He was talking to the doctor, but his tone was different, low, calm, controlled. He said, "She's always been fragile, sensitive. He thinks she pushes herself too hard. Sometimes she forgets to eat or takes things too personally. It's just how she is." The doctor murmured something I couldn't hear. Daniel continued, "I'll take care of her. I always do." Something in me broke quietly at that moment because I realized he wasn't worried for me. He was worried about how I looked to everyone else. He wasn't trying to protect me. He was protecting himself. And that's when it hit me, that maybe the thing that was killing me wasn't the shouting or the silence. It was the way he made the world believe he was the hero, while I was the fragile one who needed saving. I turned my head toward the wall and let the tears fall silently, not because I was weak, but because I finally understood. When morning came, the doctor told me I was free to go home. Daniel packed my things and helped me into the car. The sun was bright outside, but it felt distant, like it belonged to another world. On the way home, he reached over and squeezed my hand. "Let's forget all this ever happened, okay? Just start fresh." I looked out the window, watching the streets pass by. Part of me wanted to believe him, to believe that maybe this was the turning point, that maybe this time would be different. But deep down, something had shifted. Something small but powerful, like the first crack in a glass before it shatters. And that's when I made a quiet promise to myself. Not to leave, not yet. I wasn't ready for that. But to see. To stop pretending that love and fear were the same thing. Because for the first time in years, I could feel the difference.
I used to believe that every love story started with fireworks, but ours began with laughter, the quiet kind, shared over coffee in a small cafe on a rainy afternoon. I was 25 then, working at a local art gallery. My life was simple. I had a tiny apartment that smelled like vanilla candles and paint thinner, because I used to spend my nights painting just for myself. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't even looking for anything, really. Daniel came in one afternoon with a group of coworkers. He looked completely out of place. Tailored suit, sharp eyes, confidence that filled the whole room. He noticed me right away. I remember it so clearly. He didn't just look, he saw. When I offered to help him find a piece of art for his office, he smiled and said, "I think I already found what I was looking for." It sounds cheesy now, but back then, it made my heart race. He was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, mature, kind. The kind of man who opened doors and remembered what kind of tea I liked. Our first few months together felt like something out of a dream. He'd surprise me at work with flowers. He'd tell everyone how lucky he was. He'd hold me like I was the most precious thing in the world. He was attentive. Too attentive sometimes, but I took it as care. If I was late getting home, he'd call. If I went out with friends, he'd ask for pictures. If I didn't text back quickly enough, he'd say he just worried too much because he loved me. Love, back then, was the excuse I used for everything I didn't understand. A year later, we got married in a small ceremony behind my parents' house. My father walked me down the aisle, my mother cried the whole time, and Daniel looked at me like I was the only person in the world. Everyone said we were perfect together. And for a while, it felt true. But perfection has a way of hiding cracks, tiny ones you can't see until it's too late. The first crack appeared 6 months into our marriage. It was a small thing. At least that's what I told myself. I'd planned a dinner with my old college friends. We hadn't seen each other in years, and I was excited. I put on a dress Daniel had said he liked before, a soft blue one that made me feel confident. When he came home and saw me getting ready, his smile faded. "Where are you going?" he asked. I told him. I said it lightly, like it was no big deal. He didn't say much, just nodded, but his tone changed. The silence between us felt heavy all night. When I got back later, he was sitting on the couch, staring at the TV that wasn't even on. "You could have invited me," he said. "I thought you had work," I replied. "Still," he murmured, "you didn't even ask." It sounded like nothing at first, like a small misunderstanding between two people who loved each other. But it wasn't the words that stayed with me. It was the way he said them. Calm, quiet, disappointed, as if I had failed him somehow. That night, I apologized. Not because I thought I'd done something wrong, but because it was easier that way. After that, the little rules began. Not spoken rules, invisible ones. He didn't like me going out without him. He preferred if I stayed home because he missed me too much. He said my friends didn't understand our kind of love. And when I hesitated, he'd smile and say, "You know, I just want what's best for you, right?" That line, "what's best for you," became his favorite phrase. And for a long time, I believed him. The second year of our marriage was when things really started to change. I quit my job. At first, it was my choice, or at least it felt that way. Daniel said we didn't need the extra income and that I should focus on things I loved. "You've always said you wanted to paint more," he reminded me. So I did. I stayed home, painted, cooked, waited for him to come home. At first, it felt peaceful, like I was finally living the life I dreamed of. A calm home, a caring husband, no stress. But slowly, that peace turned into silence. He started working late, then later, then sometimes not coming home until after midnight. When I asked, he'd laugh and kiss my forehead. "You worry too much, Laura. You know how clients are." And I did. I believed him, because believing him was easier than asking more questions. One evening, I decided to surprise him at work. I made him dinner, his favorite, lemon chicken, and drove to his office. But when I got there, the lights were off. The parking lot was empty. He wasn't there. When he came home hours later, I asked about it gently. He smiled that same soft smile and said, "You must have come too early. I was at a meeting across town." I nodded, but something in his tone made me uneasy. The calmness in his voice, the ease with which he lied. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing, steady, peaceful, while my heart raced like it was trying to warn me of something. A few months later, I started noticing other things. His phone, always face down, the way he took calls in another room, the sudden new cologne. When I asked, he'd chuckle and say, "You're imagining things again, sweetheart." And the way he said it, with a sigh and a smile, made me feel like a child being scolded. So I stopped asking. When my mother came to visit one weekend, she noticed I wasn't myself. "You've lost weight," she said, her brow furrowing. "Are you okay?" I smiled, too quickly. "I'm fine, Mom, just tired." Daniel came into the room then, all charm and grace. He hugged my mother, offered her tea, asked about her garden. She adored him. Everyone did. When she left, he closed the door and said softly, "You shouldn't tell people you're tired. It makes me look like I'm not taking care of you." I wanted to tell him that wasn't what she meant, but his voice, calm as ever, stopped me. He wasn't angry. He never shouted. He didn't need to. His power came from quiet control. By our third anniversary, I barely recognized myself. I had stopped seeing friends. I didn't paint anymore. I spent most days cleaning, cooking, or waiting for the sound of his car in the driveway, waiting for him to decide whether it would be a good night or a quiet one. And still, when he'd look at me and say, "I love you," I'd smile and whisper it back. Because that's what love was supposed to sound like. But love shouldn't make you afraid to speak. It shouldn't make you apologize for existing. It shouldn't feel like walking on glass every single day. I didn't know it yet, but that quiet fear, that carefulness, was the beginning of the end. Because fear and love can't live in the same house forever. One always kills the other. And in my house, fear was slowly winning. It's strange how quickly normal can shift. One day, I thought Daniel and I were just having a rough patch, like every couple does. The next, I realized I'd built my life around his moods. If he came home quiet, I'd speak softly. If he looked tired, I'd wait to talk. If he seemed happy, I'd hold my breath, hoping it would last. I used to think love meant adapting, learning how to fit someone else's needs. But now I know it meant disappearing piece by piece until I was barely there at all. The first time he hit me, it didn't even feel real. It was a Thursday evening. I remember because I'd made dinner early, roast chicken, his favorite. He came home late, again, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I tried to keep my voice calm when I asked, "Rough day?" He nodded, distracted, scrolling through his phone. I told him dinner was ready. He sat down, barely looking at me, and said, "You didn't set the table right." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "The forks, they're on the wrong side." I almost laughed. I thought he was joking. "Oh, sorry, I must have—" Before I could finish, his hand slammed against the table. The plates rattled. My heart stopped. "Do I have to tell you every little thing?" he said, quietly, too quietly. Something about that tone made my stomach twist. I started to say sorry again, but then his hand moved, fast, sudden, and hit my cheek. The sound wasn't loud, but it echoed inside me. For a few seconds, everything went still. He froze too, his chest rising and falling. Then his face softened. "Oh God, Laura, I didn't mean to. You startled me. I'm sorry, baby. You know I'd never hurt you." He pulled me close while I stood there, too shocked to move. I wanted to scream, to run, to say something, but all that came out was a quiet, "It's okay." And somehow that made him relax. He kissed my forehead, whispered apologies, promised it would never happen again. And I believed him. Because when you love someone, you want to believe the good parts. You hold on to them, even when they start to fade. But it didn't stop there. It never does. The next few weeks, he was sweet again, Flowers, dinners, long hugs before bed. He told me he couldn't forgive himself. He cried once, saying, "I just get scared sometimes. I don't want to lose control. You make me feel things no one else does." I thought that meant something, that maybe he was broken and my love could fix him. But then the silence started again, the small criticisms, the sighs. And one night, it happened again. Not as sudden this time, not as shocking. Just a push, just a shove, just stop talking. And each time, afterward, came the same words. "You know I love you, right?" It became a pattern I didn't even see forming. Hurt, apology, flowers, silence, repeat. Like the seasons, always returning. One morning, I found a bruise on my arm shaped like his fingers. I covered it with makeup, telling myself it wasn't what it looked like, that it was my fault somehow. I must have said the wrong thing, pushed him too far. That's what he always said, too. If you just listen, we wouldn't fight. If you didn't nag, I wouldn't get upset. If you weren't so emotional, I wouldn't lose my temper. Every sentence started with, "if you," and ended with, "I'm sorry." And somewhere along the way, I started saying sorry first. My parents called less often. I made excuses when they did. My friends drifted away. I told them I was busy, tired, fine. When my mother asked if I was happy, I smiled and said, "Of course, Daniel takes such good care of me." She believed me. Everyone did. Because that's what he wanted, for the world to see the perfect husband, the one who opened doors, who donated to charity, who held his wife's hand at family dinners. They didn't see the way his hand tightened just a little too much under the table. They didn't hear the words he whispered when no one else was around. "You're lucky to have me. No one else would put up with you. You'd be nothing without me." And for a long time, I believed that too. Then came the night everything started to unravel. It was late, almost midnight. I was sitting on the couch, waiting for him again. His phone buzzed on the table. He'd left it behind when he went out for work. I hesitated, staring at it. I never went through his phone before. But something deep inside me, a small voice I'd been ignoring for years, told me to look. When I picked it up, I saw a message on the screen. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." My whole body went cold. I didn't even open the message thread. I didn't need to. The words were enough. When Daniel came home, I was sitting at the table, phone in front of me. He froze when he saw it. Then slowly, his face changed, calm again, too calm. "Where did you get that?" he asked. "You left it here," I said quietly. He picked it up, turned it off, and placed it in his pocket. Then he smiled. "You shouldn't go through other people's things, Laura." Other people's things. I wanted to shout, to demand an explanation, but the words wouldn't come. He leaned closer, "You're tired," he said. "You're always tired lately. Maybe you should rest." I stood up, shaking. "Who is she, Daniel?" He sighed, running his hand through his hair. "You're overreacting again." Then, before I could step back, his hand came up, fast, hard, across my face. The world blurred. The room spun. I stumbled, hit the counter, and fell. He didn't help me up right away. He just stared at me, breathing heavily until I started crying. Then he crouched down, touched my chin gently, and said, "Look what you made me do."
That night, I slept on the bathroom floor with the door locked. In the morning, he was gone. There was a note on the counter. Went to work. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stared at those words until they blurred. That was the day I stopped pretending. Over the next few weeks, I tried to gather pieces of myself again, quietly, carefully, like someone trying not to wake a sleepy animal. I started painting again, just little things, flowers, windows, the ocean. It helped me breathe. But Daniel noticed. One afternoon, he came home early and found me painting. He looked at the canvas, soft colors, sunlight, peace, and said, "You have too much free time." I was just wasting time, he interrupted. Then, almost casually, he grabbed the canvas and threw it on the floor. I remember the sound, the wood frame snapping. I remember kneeling, trying to pick up the pieces while he watched. He didn't apologize that time. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. After that, the days blurred. I stopped painting again. I stopped calling my mother. I stopped expecting things to get better. Until that one morning, the last morning before the hospital. We'd had another argument the night before. I don't even remember what it was about. Something small, something meaningless. But he was angry, and I was tired. When I woke up, my body felt heavy. My heart hurt in a way I couldn't describe. He was pacing the kitchen, muttering about how I made him look bad. I tried to say sorry again, my voice barely a whisper. He turned, slammed his hand on the counter and shouted, "You can't do anything right." Then the world tilted. I felt dizzy, lightheaded. My vision dimmed at the edges. The last thing I remember was him saying, "Don't you dare pass out on me now." Then, nothing. When I woke in the hospital later that day, his face was the first thing I saw. Concerned, worried, devoted. Everyone thought he was a hero. And I almost believed it again. Because that's the thing about abuse. It doesn't just break your bones. It breaks your sense of truth. You start to question your own memory, your own reality, your own worth. And sometimes, even when the truth is staring right at you, you close your eyes because it hurts too much to see. When I opened my eyes in the hospital, the first thing I saw was the light, bright, white, almost too clean. The second thing I saw was Daniel, sitting beside my bed, holding my hand. He looked tired. His hair was messy. There were dark circles under his eyes. And for a brief moment, I felt relief. He was here. He'd brought me to safety. But then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. That calm, rehearsed look I'd seen before.
The same one he used whenever we had guests. "Hey, baby," he said softly. "You scared me." My throat was dry. "What happened?" "You fainted. I found you on the floor. I thought you were gone." His voice cracked just a little, and a nurse nearby gave him a sympathetic smile. Everyone thought he was the perfect husband. I tried to remember the morning, but everything felt blurry, like a dream that slips away when you reach for it. He squeezed my hand and said, "You need to take better care of yourself." And just like that, the blame shifted again, gently, smoothly, the way it always did. The doctor came in a few minutes later, checking my vitals. "You were severely dehydrated. Your blood pressure dropped suddenly. Have you been eating properly?" I hesitated. Daniel answered for me. "She forgets to eat when she's stressed. I keep telling her, but she's stubborn." The doctor nodded sympathetically. "You're lucky your husband found you when he did." Lucky. That word echoed in my mind like an insult. Daniel smiled modestly. "I just did what anyone would do." But when the doctor left, that smile changed. It faded, just slightly, enough that I knew the performance was over. He leaned closer, his voice low. "You need to be careful, Laura. People might start asking questions." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He brushed a strand of hair from my face. "I mean, you don't want them thinking you're unstable. You fainted because you don't take care of yourself. Remember that." Then he kissed my forehead and whispered, "I'll bring you some food later." The door closed behind him. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't lucky. I was trapped. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound, the soft beep of the heart monitor, the footsteps in the hallway, made me flinch. I kept replaying his words. People might start asking questions. Something in me shifted.
For so long, I'd made excuses for him. I'd told myself he didn't mean it, that he was just stressed, that he loved me in his own way. But now, lying in that sterile hospital bed, I saw it clearly. He didn't love me. He loved control. And the hospital, this whole scene, it was just another way to play the hero. The next morning, a nurse came in, a kind woman with soft eyes and gray streaks in her hair. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart?" she asked. "Better," I said quietly. She smiled. "Good. Your husband's been here every minute. He really cares about you." I hesitated. "Has he been talking to anyone? Doctors, maybe?" She nodded. "Oh, yes. He's been very involved. He even asked if he could see your medical records." Something inside me went cold. "He did?" She nodded again. "He said he wanted to make sure you're getting the right treatment. You're lucky to have someone so attentive." Lucky. Again, that word. When she laughed, I stared at the wall for a long time, trying to steady my breathing. Why would he want my medical records? Then I remembered something. A few months back, I'd overheard him on the phone saying, "It'll be easier once everything's in my name." At the time, I'd assumed it was work. But now, a terrible thought formed in my mind. Was he trying to make me look sick? Unstable? Later that day, my friend Mia came to visit. We hadn't seen each other in months. The moment she walked in, her face fell. "Laura, oh my God, you look so pale. I forced a small smile. I'm okay. Just fainted. She looked at me for a long time. Then she leaned closer and whispered, "Did he do this to you?" My heart stopped. "What?" "You heard me," she said, her voice trembling. "Did Daniel hurt you?" I shook my head quickly. "No, he helped me. He brought me here." She didn't look convinced. "That man gives me chills, Laura. He called me last night before I came here. Told me not to visit because you need rest." "Who says that?" I swallowed hard. "He called you?" She nodded. "He said you were too emotional, that I might upset you." Tears filled my eyes. That was it. That's what he was doing. Controlling the story. Making sure no one saw the truth. Mia grabbed my hand. "If you ever need to leave, call me. I mean it. I'll come get you, no questions asked." Her words broke something open inside me. A small, fragile piece of hope I thought I'd lost. That night, Daniel returned with flowers and my favorite soup. He set them down carefully, like a man in love. "Feeling better?" he asked. I nodded, but my voice was quiet. "Yes." He sat beside me, smiling. "You scared me, you know? When I found you like that, I thought I'd lost you." His eyes filled with tears. Real ones. Or maybe he was just that good at pretending. "I love you, Laura. I don't know what I'd do without you." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But all I could hear were Mia's words echoing in my head. "Did he do this to you?" And then, the next morning, everything changed. I woke up early, just as the sun was coming through the window. Daniel wasn't there yet. The nurse came in with my breakfast tray. Oatmeal, juice, and some medication. "Your husband said you've been forgetting your pills," she said kindly. "So he brought them from home." I frowned. "He what?" She held up a small plastic bottle. "Said it's your regular prescription." But I didn't have any prescription. I looked at the label. My name was printed neatly, but the medicine name wasn't familiar. "What is this for?" I asked. The nurse squinted. "Looks like an anti-anxiety medication. He said your doctor prescribed it last year." My chest tightened. I'd never taken anything like that in my life. I took the bottle when she left and hid it under my blanket. Then I Googled the name later on the hospital tablet. It was strong, the kind that could make someone drowsy, disoriented, forgetful. My hands started shaking. He wasn't just pretending to care. He was trying to make me doubt my own mind. That afternoon, when he came back, I confronted him. "Daniel," I said, holding up the bottle, "what is this?" He froze, then smiled faintly. "Oh, that. It's what your doctor gave you last year, remember? For anxiety." I never had anxiety medication. His expression didn't change. "You don't remember? That's exactly why you need it, Laura." Something in his voice, calm, practiced, made my stomach turn. He reached out, trying to take the bottle from my hand. "Let me hold on to those for you." I pulled back. "No." His smile vanished. "Laura, you're being dramatic again." "Stop lying to me," I whispered. The mask fell completely then. His face hardened. "You think anyone will believe you? You fainted. You've been emotional for months. You forget things. You look sick." My pulse raced. "You did this to me." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Careful. You're not thinking straight. You're tired. Maybe it's best if you rest before you hurt yourself again." The way he said it, calm, cold, confident, terrified me more than the yelling ever did. That's when I knew he'd already planned everything. If I disappeared tomorrow, everyone would believe his version. That night, when he left, I called Mia. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She answered on the second ring. "Laura?" "Mia, please, don't hang up. I need help." I told her everything. The pills, the lies, the way he controlled the story. There was silence for a few seconds. Then she said, "Okay, listen to me carefully. I'm coming tomorrow morning. Don't tell him. I'll get you out of there." I started crying quietly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just hang on one more night." When Daniel came back later, I pretended to be asleep. He kissed my forehead, whispered, "I'll take care of you," and left again. But I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every minute felt like an hour. Every shadow in the room looked like him. At dawn, I heard footsteps in the hallway, softer, lighter ones, then a knock. "Laura?" Mia's voice. I opened the door, shaking. She looked at me, pale, exhausted, but determined. "Let's go," she said. I didn't even pack. I just grabbed my coat and followed her out, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. We didn't talk until we were in her car, speeding away from the hospital. Then I finally whispered, "He'll come after me." Mia reached over, squeezed my hand. "Not if we make sure everyone knows the truth first." And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in so long. Safety. Not complete, not permanent, but enough to take the first breath of freedom. The morning light looked different that day, softer, warmer somehow. Maybe it was because I was seeing it through a car window instead of the bars of fear I'd built around myself for so many years. Mia drove in silence for a while, her hand steady on the wheel. I could see how hard she was trying not to look at me too much, not to ask too soon. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle. "Where do you want to go?" I didn't know how to answer. For years, home was wherever Daniel was. Now, home was nowhere. Or maybe home was wherever I was safe. "I don't know," I whispered. "Just not back there." She nodded. "You'll stay with me for now. My guest room's empty. No one will find you there." I wanted to argue, to insist I'd figure something out on my own. But the truth was, I couldn't. Not yet. My body was weak, and my heart even weaker. So I just said thank you. Mia smiled faintly. "Don't thank me yet. You're not out of the woods, Laura, but you're on your way." Her home was small but warm, the kind of place that smelled like coffee and cinnamon. I hadn't smelled anything comforting in a long time. When I stepped inside, something inside me broke. I sank to the floor, sobbing, not from pain, but from relief. Mia knelt beside me and held me quietly until I could breathe again. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I shouldn't be crying like this." She shook her head. "You should. You've been holding it in for years." I sat there for a long time, letting every tear carry a little piece of that house, that fear, that false version of love. Over the next few days, I slept a lot, ate in small bites, walked around the backyard when I could. Mia didn't push me to talk, but she listened whenever I did. One afternoon, as we sat on her porch, she asked, "Do you want to report him?" The question hung heavy between us. I thought about it, about the police, the questions, the disbelief I might face. I thought about how convincing Daniel could be, how gentle his lies sounded. But then I remembered that bottle of pills, the bruises that had faded long before anyone could see, the way he'd smiled in the hospital while pretending to care. "Yes," I said finally, "I do." The process was slow, painful. I told my story to officers who nodded politely, wrote things down, asked for details I didn't want to remember. When it was over, I felt both lighter and heavier, like I'd dropped something that had been crushing me, but my body hadn't learned how to stand up straight again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch again, looking at the stars. They looked so far away, and yet, for the first time in years, I felt connected to something bigger, something untouched by Daniel's control. Mia joined me quietly, handing me a blanket. "You did the hardest thing today," she said softly. "I feel scared," I admitted. "Of him?" "Yes, but also of what comes next." She nodded. "That's normal. You've lived in survival mode for so long, you forgot what peace feels like." I stared at her, tears welling up again. "How do I find it again?" She smiled sadly. "One day at a time, one small truth at a time." Weeks passed. I started seeing a counselor, a kind woman named Susan with soft gray eyes and a voice that made me feel safe. The first thing she said was, "You've been through something that tried to erase you, but you're still here. That means something." At first, I didn't know how to talk. I kept saying things like, "It wasn't that bad," or "Maybe I'm remembering wrong." She would just listen, then gently say, "Let's not measure pain. Let's just name it." So I started naming it, every bruise, every silence, every moment I laughed to make him feel comfortable while my heart was breaking inside. Naming it made it real. And once it was real, it started to lose power over me. One day, Susan asked, "What was the first thing you loved before him?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it for a long time before whispering, "Painting. I used to paint before I got married." "Do you still have your brushes?" she asked. I shook my head. He threw them away once, said it was a waste of time. Susan smiled gently. "Then maybe it's time to buy new ones." That weekend, Mia drove me to an art supply store. The smell of paint and paper made me feel like I'd walked into a forgotten part of myself. I picked up a small set of watercolors, nothing fancy, just simple colors. When I dipped the brush into blue and watched it bloom across the paper, I felt something loosen in my chest. It wasn't just paint, it was freedom, quiet, tender freedom. I started painting every morning after that, sometimes flowers, sometimes just colors that felt like the mood of the day. Soft pinks for calm, muted grays for reflection, a bright yellow on the days I dared to hope. Mia would peek into my room sometimes and smile. Looks like you're finding your colors again. A few months later, the case finally moved forward. Daniel was questioned about the medication, the bruises, the medical records he requested. He denied everything, of course. He was calm, polite, articulate, the same man everyone loved at church and in the neighborhood. But there was one thing he couldn't explain: the prescription bottle. It had his handwriting on it. That, combined with hospital reports and witness statements, finally broke the image he'd spent years building. He was charged, and though the sentence was shorter than I wished, it was enough to prove I wasn't crazy. When I got the call, I didn't cry or celebrate. I just sat quietly, holding the phone, breathing deeply. Justice didn't feel like revenge. It felt like silence, like finally being able to sleep without fear. Months passed. The seasons changed. I started volunteering at a local art class for women recovering from trauma. The first day I stood in front of them, nervous, shaking, I said, "I'm not a teacher. I'm just someone who forgot who she was for a while." They smiled, some nodded, and we painted, and silence, together. In that quiet room, surrounded by color and light, I realized something. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, like water soaking into dry earth. One evening, Mia found me sitting on the porch again, a cup of tea in my hands. "You've come a long way," she said softly. I smiled. "Some days it still feels like I haven't moved at all." She shrugged. "Healing isn't a straight line. It's a circle. You'll revisit things, but each time you'll understand them better." I looked at her, my eyes soft. "Thank you for not giving up on me." She smiled. "You never gave up on yourself. You just forgot for a while." Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the word love. For so long, I'd thought love meant sacrifice, silence, endurance, obedience. Now I knew love could be gentle, patient, and safe. It could look like a friend showing up at dawn. It could sound like your own voice saying, "I deserve peace." I whispered those words to myself before closing my eyes. I deserve peace. And for the first time in so many years, I believed it. Time has a strange way of softening things. It doesn't erase pain, not completely, but it dulls the edges, makes it easier to hold without bleeding every time you touch it. It's been almost 2 years since that hospital morning. 2 years since I woke up in that sterile room, believing my husband was the only person who cared whether I lived or died. 2 years since I learned he was the reason I nearly didn't. When I think back now, it feels like watching someone else's life, like I'm standing outside a window, looking in at a woman I barely recognize. She's sitting at a kitchen table, staring at her husband's smile. She doesn't know the storm that's coming. She's too busy convincing herself she's safe. I wish I could reach through that window. I wish I could whisper to her, "You're not weak. You're surviving." I live in a small town now. Nothing fancy, just quiet. There's a small lake behind my apartment. On most mornings, I sit by the water with my sketchbook, painting the ripples as the sun rises. Sometimes I can still feel the echo of the past in my bones, that heaviness in my chest when I hear raised voices or when someone moves too suddenly near me. But instead of running from those feelings, I have learned to breathe through them. They're reminders, not of what broke me, but of what I survived. A few months ago, I went back to my old neighborhood, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to close that chapter. The house was still there, freshly painted, flowers in the yard, like nothing had ever happened. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, watching the curtains move gently in the window. A new family lives there now. A mother, a father, 2 children. I could hear them laughing inside. For a moment, it hurt, the sound of happiness in a place that once held so much fear. But then I smiled. Because that's what healing is. Learning that life goes on even after you thought yours had ended. And sometimes letting someone else's laughter fill the spaces your pain left behind is its own kind of peace. When I got home that night, I took out a box I hadn't opened since I left. Inside were a few photographs. Our wedding day, a trip we once took to the coast, letters he'd written me before everything changed. I sat there, staring at those frozen smiles, and I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel sadness. Just distance. Like those moments belonged to another life, another version of me. And maybe they did. I put the photos back in the box and whispered, "Thank you." Not to him, but to myself, for surviving it, for learning from it, for walking away. Then I sealed the box, placed it on a high shelf, and let it go. Sometimes people ask me if I've forgiven him. It's not an easy question. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't about saying what happened was okay. It's about refusing to let it poison what's left of your life. So yes, in a way, I have forgiven him. Not because he deserves it, but because I deserve peace. There are still nights when I wake up sweating, my heart pounding, as if I'm back in that house again. When that happens, I do what my counselor taught me. I place my hand on my chest and remind myself where I am. "You're safe," I whisper. "You're here." Then I take a deep breath and listen to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the rustle of trees outside, the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. Each sound pulls me back into the present, reminding me that I built this piece myself. I've also learned something about love. Love isn't supposed to make you smaller. It isn't supposed to silence you or make you afraid to speak. It isn't about control or sacrifice or keeping the peace by breaking yourself. Real love, the kind that heals instead of harms, is gentle. It's a hand that reaches for you, not to hold you down, but to lift you up. I haven't found that love yet, but I'm no longer searching for it in others. Right now, I'm learning to give it to myself. One Sunday afternoon, I was painting by the lake when a little girl wandered over, curious. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. "What are you painting?" she asked, peeking over my shoulder. "Just the water," I said. "See how it moves?" She nodded seriously. "It looks like the sky fell in." I laughed softly. "That's a beautiful way to put it." She grinned. "My mom says painting helps when you feel sad." "She's right," I told her. "It helps you see the world again." Then she ran back to her mother, leaving me smiling quietly at the reflection in the lake. The sky really did look like it had fallen in, and somehow, that felt perfect. Every few weeks, I write letters to my younger self, the one who thought love meant endurance, who stayed because she was afraid, who thought silence was safer than truth. I tell her things like, "You are not what he said you were. You are more than the pain you carried. You didn't fail by breaking. You healed by surviving." Sometimes I even end the letters with, "I'm proud of you." And I mean it. One evening, Mia came to visit. She's still my anchor, the friend who pulled me out of the storm and never let me sink again.
We sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky gold and pink. She looked at me and said, "You're glowing these days." I smiled. "It's probably just the light." She shook her head. "No, it's you. You're free." I didn't know what to say, but she was right. Freedom has a glow of its own, quiet, steady, almost invisible until someone points it out. Before she left, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "You saved yourself, Laura. Don't ever forget that." After she drove away, I sat there for a while, feeling the evening breeze on my skin. I looked up at the sky, the same sky that had witnessed my pain, my fear, my breaking, and whispered, "Thank you for letting me stay." Because for a long time, I didn't think I'd make it this far. Now, when I tell my story, whether in small groups, art circles, or to women who are still trapped where I once was, I don't focus on the violence, or the betrayal, or even the lies. I focus on the quiet moments that came after. The first sunrise I saw as a free woman. The first laugh that didn't end in tears. The first time I looked in the mirror and recognized the woman staring back. That's the real story. Not the pain, but the rising after it. Not the loss, but the rediscovery. Because survival isn't the end, it's the beginning. If you're listening to this and you see yourself somewhere in my story, if you feel small or scared or unseen, please hear this. You are not alone. You are not weak for staying, and you are not broken beyond repair. The world wants you to believe healing means forgetting, but healing means remembering and choosing to move forward anyway. I still keep one of my first paintings framed on my wall. It's simple, just a sunrise over calm water. But every time I look at it, I see more than colors. I see a promise that no matter how dark the night, the light always finds a way back. And so did I.